Hey everybody, welcome to your horoscopes for the week. These are the horoscopes for the week ending June 24th, which is, I believe, our last full week of June. I mean, technically, most of next week is June, but it goes all the way up till Friday. But still, it really is our last full week of June, and we have a lot going on this week, actually. We've got the summer solstice going on, which also means that the sun moves from Gemini into Cancer about the same day. We're kicking off with a bit of a new moon. It's not quite a new moon. There is a semi-close conjunction between the sun and the moon. So we actually ended our week with a new moon. And so we're kind of moving on from that as well into a quarter moon by the end of the week. And that really big challenge that Jupiter has been in is pretty much breaking up this week, at least temporarily, because of course we do have some things coming up on the horizon that may bring that back a little bit. But I also feel that Jupiter is moving forward, and by moving forward is sort of moving out of that difficulty or that challenge with Pluto. Don't really know when Jupiter's retrograde is off the top of my head, though, so it may come back. So let's not get too excited, but enjoy what we've got right now. So let's go ahead and get started as we always do with Aries. We continue to have Chiron in Aries, and focus continues to be on finances for Aries as well. And Chiron is, pardon me, a really interesting influence over your finances, because it really is all about getting out of the mindset of what is quote unquote expected in order to look outside of the box for creative ways to build your capital. Or not just about building your capital, it has a lot to do with savings, it has a lot to do with making more money, it has a lot to do with changing where your money is coming in from. So there's really a lot around the finances. And I think that this is why, for most people, it is a very difficult concept to grasp outside of finding a place to bring the money in and, of course, watching the money go, if that makes sense. This is out of that norm, though, of living paycheck to paycheck and really taking a look at what your money can do for you. And there is a lot of creative ways these days to be able to invest your money, or specifically making investments in your future. So this encompasses saving money, this encompasses money for retirement, this encompasses investments. Basically, this is about looking at what you need to do with your money and thinking outside the box a little bit. Now, Chiron is an influence. The mythology behind Chiron is that he was born into a specific type of people. He did not like where he was born. There was a lot of slavery going on. There was a lot of people abusing other people going on. There was this huge power trip that it did not resonate with him. He was actually a very peaceful man and left behind that life to pursue a more humble type of life as a monk and as a spiritual man, which meant that he was shunned by everybody around them. When we're talking about this influence over your finances, this plays out in looking at creative ideas and having the people around you look at you and go, "You are nuts," for even thinking that this is going to work. And the truth is that they may not know the whole story, or they may not understand. And so their lack of understanding interprets into their not being able to be on board with your ideas. So yes, of course, it is always a good idea to get advice from your loved ones. Better idea to get advice from a financial advisor, though, somebody that really knows the best course of action for you currently right now. Because if we start to get out of the scope of our knowledge of something, it is always a good idea, especially when it comes to something as important as money. It is always a good idea to speak to somebody with more knowledge than you. Trust me on this. I don't think I'd still be in business if I didn't have a good bookkeeper. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a copy. I would greatly appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and move on to Taurus. Taurus, it has a little bit of a financial focus involved here, especially with Jupiter bringing his expansive energy into your finances this week. But we're really looking at our financial long-term goals here. And we continue to have Jupiter and Uranus influencing sort of both sides of this. Now, let's skip ahead to the good news here, as Jupiter does continue to be in a square with Venus as well as Pluto. And Uranus also is in a square with Mars as well as Venus by the end of the week. Now, that square between Uranus and those two planets is going to continue through the rest of the week. But the good news is that Jupiter's square with Pluto as well as Venus is breaking up. Now, this was the big one that was really being a serious thorn in our behinds here, okay? So that is really good news because those two planets are so heavy. It just seems to create such a difficult challenge, especially in fixed signs, in terms of not being able to find a solution or not being able to change the situation. So that actually is kind of a good thing. However, as we get to about Thursday, going back to that square between Jupiter and Venus and Mars, which are moving closer and closer and closer into conjunction with each other, the moon moves into conjunction with these two planets on Thursday at the same time. So this creates kind of a bit of a challenge here. Now, Mars has finally moved out of focus on trauma. Thank God, okay? Because if I had to deal with any more release of anger, I don't know what I would have done. I feel like it's affected everybody on some level. We're either dealing with the release of anger or we're dealing with people around us who are being triggered all the time. Either way, you can't get away from it. So that's been very difficult, and I'm very glad to see it go finally. But with this particular challenge here, Uranus is focused on long-term goals. We're talking long-term financial goals here. So Uranus is like, let's grow our capital and create some out-of-the-box ideas on what to do with that capital, right? Something we've never done before, which is a lot of fun. However, Uranus moves into this square with Venus and Mars, both planets as well as the moon on Thursday, and all three planets are focused on your support system. So this creates a little bit of a challenge, especially if you have a partnership. So if we're talking about capital and what to do with it in business, or if we're talking about capital and what to do with that within a partnership, within a married unit, right? Where the two don't necessarily see eye to eye on what is the best course of action. One, this is always an argument, and money is like the number one thing that couples fight over, obviously, because it is such a big deal in the relationship. It's such a big deal in your life. And most importantly, it's a really big deal in terms of your long-term security. So with all of that being said, it very easily can turn into an argument where both sides are just stuck on what they feel is right, and it doesn't matter what anybody else has to say about it. You want to get out of that space, obviously, because that space is not helpful. There's never a resolution in that space. It is best for both parties to come to the discussion with their proof as to why their idea would work better, so that the two can come together with a compromise that works best as a whole, if that makes sense. That way you can have your discussions without it being a major blow up. Now, Jupiter is in a grand sextile for most of the week. This does start to break up by the end of the week. But for most of the week, in a grand sextile with Saturn as well as the moon. Now, grand sextile is a completely different ballgame here. We're not talking about a challenge anymore. Jupiter's moved out of the challenge and into, hey, let's all work together to create some magic. So again, when we're talking about our financial long-term goals, Saturn's focus is on your day-to-day schedule, and it's retrograde, which is an interesting layer. The sun's focus is on your current business, so your career, your work. So of course, obviously the money is coming from work, but also we're talking about Saturn in retrograde. Now, Saturn is all about responsibility. When it's retrograde, it shows you where you're taking on responsibilities that don't belong to you, or you're not taking on enough responsibility. So this is one of those classic cases, really, where you look at your day and, you know, after spending months saying, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. Look at your day and really be responsible for what you can accomplish in a day. For example, I do Grubhub on the side. So basically, if I work a couple of hours doing Grubhub, I make some money. But if I want to make more money, I need to establish certain hours in my day and stick to that schedule and stick to those hours to make sure that I do make the money that I want to make. And you have to be motivated to do that. And you have to have a little bit of self-discipline too, because a lot of times it's very easy for me to go, it's a slow day, I'm kind of bored, I'd rather be back at the office having a cup of coffee. I think I'll just call it a day and go home. And then the result of that, of course, is I don't make the money that I want to make. So really, this is a very helpful aspect. It's showing you, you want to grow your capital. It's showing you what you need to do to take the steps to make sure that you're moving in the right direction, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you guys this week. There's like a whole lot of really cool stuff going on. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a coffee. I would really appreciate that. We're going to move on to Gemini as we celebrate the last few days. Pardon me, the last few days of the sun in Gemini, the last few days of the Gemini party before the sun moves on to Cancer on the 20th during the solstice. We have the first day of summer coming up this week as well. So, I mean, yes, it's kind of sad that the Gemini party is over, but let's get out our beach wear because it's time to celebrate summer coming, right? And if you have been in California, you're really looking forward to summer because it was like literally 6 months of rain for us, which is crazy. That never happens. Focus is on your career for you guys this week, and the sun's grand sextile with Jupiter and Saturn is kind of interesting because we're talking about focusing on your career, and Saturn is retrograde. So Saturn's focus is on your day-to-day schedule, and in retrograde does a couple of things. Shows you where maybe you could up your responsibility a little bit more, especially in your day-to-day schedule, but it also can show you where you're taking on responsibilities that don't belong to you. Both of these things are detrimental to your growth in your business and specifically your growth in your finances, because this is, of course, where Jupiter is really focused here. Obviously, your business is responsible for the money that's coming in. So you need to make sure that you are utilizing every second of every day in the way, the best way possible to grow your capital, if that makes sense. I think that Geminis, as a rule, are some of the most brilliant people, really, because I know quite a few of them. They don't just are not just good at one thing. They're good at multiple things. They don't just have one business. They have several businesses. In fact, in some cases, I've seen Geminis that have taken an idea, this is what I want to do for me, and created a whole business plan around that in order to succeed personally as well as professionally. With that being said, because Geminis are so incredibly smart and intelligent, they also tend to bounce from one thing to another pretty quickly. And that bouncing from one thing to another pretty quickly does have an adverse effect on your success. So you have this brilliance and you have all of these wonderful tools, but you just can't seem to get anywhere. It's like being in a hamster wheel, if that makes sense. But let's just stop the hamster wheel for just a minute, because Saturn in focused on your day-to-day schedule and in retrograde is basically showing you, look, you have all the time in the world to do this. You just have to stay focused on it in order to be successful. If you can stay focused on this one thing, then you can make more money. And of course, your business is going to grow, if that makes sense. Now, this is a tall order. I get it. It can be very difficult for a lot of Geminis to do this. However, make it a game with yourself. I'm an intellectual as well. I know that I've got certain responsibilities that I've got to take care of, but there comes a point in the day where it's time to reward me. And I reward me by doing absolutely nothing at all. Even talking to other people, if I can get away with it sometimes. That's my brain really needs like that hard reset, right? Just complete and total silence from everybody, which I'm sure you guys are very similar. So give yourself that reward at the end of the day, or give yourself that reward throughout the day. You can always make sure that you're a couple of hours focused on your business, and then give yourself a half hour to bebop around in there so that you can go back and do a couple more hours focus on your business. You can always get around your Gemini brain. Trust me on that. So that is what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a copy. I would love it. And we're going to move on to Cancer, because the party is about to begin in Cancer this week. We, of course, have the summer solstice coming up this week, which means the sun moves into Cancer on the same day. So we've got a Cancer party going on, which is pretty cool. Now, a couple of things are happening as the sun is moving into your sign, and we're going to focus on the good stuff first as the sun moves into a sextile with Venus and Mars and the moon on Thursday, when the moon moves into conjunction with those two planets. Now, couple of things. The sun's focus is on career, and Venus and Mars and the moon's focus is on your support system. This brings the support that you need towards your career goals, which really does kind of open things up for you a little bit, makes it easier for you to pick and choose what you want to do or what direction you want to go in, if that makes sense. Now, the difficulty lies in the sun's square with Neptune. Neptune is focused on relationships. And when the sun is in a square, and I should say the sun and Mercury, which is still in Gemini, so it affects you, but not quite as much, if that makes sense. The sun's square with Neptune. Neptune is focused on relationships. Now, this presents a challenge when you have an idea, you're really excited about it, you're ready to go guns blazing into the future, and somebody that's really close to you says, you know, I don't know if that's such a good idea. You might want to rethink that. And it just takes the wind out of your sails when that happens. Because for some reason, and I don't know what the reason is, okay, but I am a girl, and you know, girls do make sense of stuff in a way that doesn't make any sense at all, if that makes sense. And that's because women tend to be emotional thinkers. When it comes to cancers, cancers are very similar to that, male or female. They tend to rationalize things in an emotional way, which is destructive in the end. So if somebody opposes your plan, what tends to happen in many cases is when somebody says, you know what, I just don't think that that's a very good idea, your first response is to literally shut down and go, well, that person's not supportive, so I'm just not going to do it. And it's all their fault, right? Actually, it's all your fault. If you choose not to do it, it is down to your choice, not what somebody else thinks you should or shouldn't be doing. The truth is that there's a bazillion different reasons why somebody would be uncomfortable with your idea. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. or that you shouldn't pursue it, or that you shouldn't take some time to learn a little bit more before you do bite the bullet. A lot of times it's out of their own fear. I'm a mom. If my kids come up with some crazy idea of what they want to do for a living, my first worry is going to be, are you going to make any money out of it? Because if they don't make any money out of it, they're not going to be able to pay their bills. They're not going to be successful. Wah, 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 right? So basically, my head automatically goes to, I am worried about this and I have some concerns. And if I approach these things in a certain way with my Cancer child, chances are he's just going to shut down and shut me out, which you also don't want to do. The truth is that when you shut down and you shut people out, you're denying yourself. And there may be some knowledge in there. It may not mean that you have to stop doing what you're doing, but there might be some knowledge in there that might be helpful for your success also. So you don't want to shoot your foot in the process, right? So that is what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a coffee. I would really appreciate that. And we're moving into Leo. Speaking of coffee, we're moving into Leo. Lots of action taking place in Leo. We continue to have Mars and Venus, both of which are no longer focused on inner trauma. Thank goodness for that, man. Mars was literally focused on inner trauma for like 6 months. It's kind of crazy. So I'm glad that we're done with that. They're moving closer and closer into conjunction with each other. And as we get into Wednesday, the moon moves into conjunction with them as well. Good things and bad things, really. First of all, conjunctions are planets working together in the same sign. So you've got Mars, you've got Venus, you've got the moon. Mars and Venus are like the typical masculine feminine balance, which is beautiful. Add some emotions to that, and you see everything fly off balance, but at the same time, maybe not. Emotion is not necessarily a bad thing. Some emotions are actually really good ones when you think about it. So bringing that creative balance with the logic together and bringing that emotion that basically symbolizes that this really means something to me, this is really important, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And as these 3 planets move into a sextile with Mercury, Mercury is focused on career. And of course, all 3 of these other planets are focused on your support system. So this is an immense energy towards the support that you need in your career, if that makes sense. If you have issues going on where there's been a lack of communication or things are just not running smoothly, this is an energy that is specifically helping to fix those problems in terms of where you work, which is good. The downside is all 3 planets also move into a square with Uranus and Jupiter, although that square with Jupiter is going to end by the end of the week. So that is good. Uranus and Jupiter are focused on long-term financial goals. And this is very interesting, actually, because Jupiter is all about expanding, making more money, bringing more money in. Uranus is all about out-of-the-box ideas of how to do that. So we're not just going to make more money. We're going to do this in a way that we have never done it before. Unfortunately, squared with the moon, Venus, and Mars in your support system, it indicates that there's a bit of a lack of support going in that direction. So there's 2 things that come of this. One, this is the quintessential, you're in a partnership and the 2 of you don't agree on the direction that you want to go to in terms of your financial goals. Happens all the time. Have a discussion, not an argument. The other way that this plays out, though, is sort of interesting because it could also play out in you have these plans, you have these goals, but it looks like maybe where the money is coming from is a little bit unstable. So that can mean they're doing layoffs and you're not sure you're going to be one of them. That could mean that there's not a whole lot of work going on right now, so your hours are reduced, different things like that. The beauty of Uranus is we're talking about out of the box ideas, not just the same tired old way that we've been doing things all this time. So if you are gathering up money from a specific job and it just doesn't seem to be working out, maybe it's time to shake things up. Now, I know Leos are fixed signs and Leos don't care for change because they are fixed signs, but that is the fixed signs lesson now, isn't it? It is being able to adapt to change when we don't want to change. And so the more adaptable you are, the easier it is to navigate that change, if that makes sense. So yes, it's a little bit of a bummer when you think about it, but bummers or challenges, they happen to make us think about changes and or to make us focus on changes. And I think that honestly, being a fixed sign myself, as I'm the opposite of Leo, being a fixed sign myself, I don't think that most of the changes that I've made in my life would have been made had they not been made born out of a major challenge, like literally being forced to make that change because we get comfortable and we don't want things to change, right? So in a way, yes, it's difficult, but it is leading you in a direction that might be more successful for you. And that really does make all the difference in the world. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a copy because you know I'd love one. And we are moving on to Virgo. Focus is still on self with the moon coming into your sign Friday and Saturday, focusing on the past a little bit. And not just the past, the dark past, the stuff that you really don't want to have to deal with at all. And when the moon moves into opposition with first, no, not first. And the moon moves into opposition with Saturn both Friday and Saturday. This also presents a little bit of a challenge as this old stuff that's coming up seems to be getting in the way of you being able to get anything done during the day. I could really write the book on that, to be honest with you. It just is very difficult to focus on anything at all when you're dealing with stuff that should have been done a long time ago that seems to be coming up again. And the truth is that if it's coming up again, it was never done in the first place. So really, my best advice on this is to take the time to understand it, to accept it, to let it go, to bury it, to forgive and forget, and forgiveness is not just forgiving other people. And we don't forgive people because we're allowing them back in our lives again. We forgive people for ourselves so that we don't hurt ourselves holding the grudge against the person any longer. But it's also very important that we forgive ourselves for allowing ourselves to find ourselves in that situation. I mean, especially if it's one of those things where you are revisiting the situation in some way, especially if it didn't go well before, that's always one of those things that comes back to bite you in the behind later on. So really, kind of a challenge, really difficult, not something that you can't survive though. The good news is the moon's trines with Uranus and Jupiter, which are focused on long-term goals. And in some cases, letting go of these old mindsets and letting go of these traumas that you're holding on to that you don't need to be holding on to anymore actually open up doors in many different areas, specifically with your finances. If some of these traumas are tied to any kind of financial mindset, for instance, you get trauma and abuse in your childhood, and there seemed to be no money in that childhood either. That is an individual that could grow up with a mindset of, I never have any money. And so you're constantly making it and sending it out, making it and sending it out to prove to yourself that you never have any money. When that's a mindset that is really getting in your way of being able to expand financially, if that makes sense. And you don't want that to happen. We always want to be able to keep that money window open, right? So if you have been dealing with that difficulty lately, the moon is going to come in those last couple of days of the week and sort of almost bust through that myth, if that makes any sense at all, which is good because from here on out, things are clear and you can focus on making more money, right? This also includes investing your money and specifically making the money that you have work for you, not against you. So a lot's at stake here, guys, but I know that you guys can handle it. So that's what I have for you guys this week. If you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a coffee. I would love it. And we are moving on to Libra. Libra is focused on the past, but in a way to where you are sort of looking back at yourself to understand who you are now, if that makes sense. And specifically, as Ceres is moving into Libra this week as well. Ceres is known as the Great Mother. So she has a very maternal, very nurturing influence. And we're looking at a couple of different things this week. One is how you nurture you. Now, I'm talking to Libras here. I know that every single one of you sacrifices yourselves for everybody around you. I mean, it's just what Libras do. And it's not a Libra man or Libra woman thing because I've known both. And they're both equally sacrificial of themselves for other people. It's a beautiful thing, but you have to take care of you. So I feel like this influence of Ceres just barely coming into your sign this week is sort of showing you the importance of maybe a little bit more self-care or a little bit more importance on your own time, if that makes sense, and not necessarily constantly sacrificing your time for others whenever they need you, if that makes sense. And trust me, there's those people out there who just take advantage of that every time. Every single one of you knows at least one of them. The other thing is that it's interesting to go back and reflect on this self-care regime and the importance of it. When you go back and reflect, you're literally going back to determine how many times you put yourself and your needs above other people's. Now, I'm willing to bet that you don't find too many instances of that because, again, Libras are sacrificial, right? They're always sacrificing themselves. So the interesting part of that lesson is also understanding just how much energy you've put out towards these other people and not seen a reciprocation of that. It really kind of helps you to determine, why am I doing this? Why am I constantly sacrificing my energy, myself, my time for people that are not giving that back to me? And it also may help you to determine just how much your own self-care really is worth at that point. Sometimes we really have to hit or see things in a very black and white, very hard way in order to really understand what it is that we're doing to ourselves, because most of the time on a day-to-day, you don't notice it, right? Unless it's really, really big. And that could be something that comes up this week that sort of forces you to take that look backwards and to really take a look at how you're taking care of you, if that makes sense. So this isn't just a comfort thing. This isn't just a self-love or self-respect thing. This is a health thing also. And I feel like in many cases, a lot of Libras sacrifice their own health in order to be of service to other people without realizing just the extent of the damage that they're doing. And you want to make sure that you're not one of those Libras. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below in the description and send me a copy. I would love that. And we're going to move on to Scorpio. Scorpios are still in their heads this week. And actually, I want to say ideas. This is idea week for you guys because I am seeing like some really fantastic ideas coming up around you guys. And it's very important that your mindset is in the right place when these ideas come up, because being an emotional sign, being a water sign, one of the downsides to being a water sign is the emotional thought process, if that makes sense. So you have this fantastic idea. It's brilliant. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe I haven't thought of it before. I'm going to do it. And then your brain starts that thing where it's like, well, but you really don't have the money to do it. Well, but you're not really qualified to do it. Well, what if it doesn't turn out exactly the way that you want it to? Well, I mean, the list can literally go on and on and on. The point is that before you've even tried to do anything, your brain has already convinced you that it's not a good idea and you're not going to be successful. And there's just no point in even trying, right? Bottom line is you got to tell that voice to shut up. It is not your time right now. Some of these are some fantastic ideas, and while there may be some work involved, anything that is important, anything that is successful takes work. There is nothing that you're going to get for free. Basically, that's just not how life works. And that's not how life has ever worked. We have to work for everything that we have. And that's been the way of man since the first man set foot on land, if that makes sense. We've had to work for what we want. So basically, obviously, don't let that stand in your way either. Things don't have to be done overnight. Enjoy the journey just as much as enjoying the thought of getting to the destination, if that makes sense. And that is not just in a long journey, that could be in a very short journey as well. For instance, I have an idea to remodel my kitchen. And what I'd like to do is step out of the room and step back in and see my perfectly remodeled kitchen, which we all know is not going to happen. So instead, we have to enjoy the process. I'm going to start with the tile and picking out the tile, and then I'm going to do the sink, and then I'm going to do the stove. And you do it in pieces, and it may take 9 months, 12 months, a year and a half to do it. But because you have enjoyed each part of the process, it just makes the finished product that much more enjoyable. So knock out that instant gratification too, because it's not helping. And I think that that might be a fixed sign curse also, because we just don't want to deal with disruptions in any way either. And obviously life is just not going to allow us to get away with that, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a copy. I would love it. We're going to move on to Sagittarius, where Sagittarius is focused on the home, specifically home projects. But also, I feel like this has a lot to do with less about the physical home, being at home and projects around the home, if that makes sense, but really understanding for you why your environment is such an important place, if that makes sense. Now, most of the Sagittarians that I know, when they were young, they were never home, period. They were out running around, having fun, having a good old time. but they did still have that space to go to once they were spent, their energy was spent, which I mean, honestly takes like 3 or 4 weeks or something like that. You guys have mass amounts of energy. But when the energy is spent, you still need a space that's entirely yours, something that is comfortable for you, something that is convenient for you, has everything that you need, if that makes sense. And I feel like really understanding the importance of that is key to understanding you, if that makes sense. It's like you are reflected in your environment in some way. Appreciating that is important every now and then, because that environment has been put together over time. Nothing happened, where you didn't just get everything and it's all there. Obviously there's pictures from various different points in your life. There's decorations and things that reflect on your personality and who you are. And to take time to really just sit there and soak in your environment after it's been put together for over several years, I feel like in a way it's a means of reconnecting with who you were, what your plans and goals were then, and taking a moment to really understand if you actually are in the space that you were planning on being on when you first started. And if you're not, then now's the time to really pay attention to, what do I need to do to make sure I am in the space that I had planned on being? Or to maybe just take a look at it as well. For many of us, Sagittarians, of course, probably have this happen a lot. But for many of us, our focus changes as we get older. So my 20-year-old goals for my life are not the same as my 30-year-old goals for life. And it's not necessarily because I could not achieve the 20-year-old goals of my life, but things changed between 20 and 30. That meant that my goals changed along with it, and my direction changed in many ways. So no, it's not necessarily that I want to reconnect with the 20-year-old goals, but there might be something in those goals that is significant to now, if that makes sense. So reconnecting with that, even if it's very different, is a big deal. Because once you get to 45, which is where I am right now, looking back on my 20-year-old goals, the goals themselves may have changed, but it's that vivaciousness, it's that youth, it's that mentality, it's that the world is my oyster that I'm actually trying to reconnect with. And you do want to reconnect with that. As we get older, we get jaded. The world is unfair, that we see all of these injustices that take place, and it really just, we become jaded by it. Understanding that younger person through your environment helps you to harness on that energy a little bit and use it to continue in your path now. Because let's face it, 45 really isn't that old, right? I guess it depends on it depends on the day. Okay, the reality is that it depends on the day and how I feel. No, it really isn't that old. It's still plenty of time to do all kinds of stuff that I would like to do, and I want to reconnect with that old part of myself to make sure that I'm on the right track all the way around. And your environment reflects that completely. So have some fun meditating on your environment. That's what I have for you guys this week. If you love your horoscopes, do consider clicking the link and sending me a coffee. I do love my coffee. And we're going to move on to Capricorn. We continue to have Pluto, of course, 29 degrees in Capricorn. Focus is on those you love. And while that square with Jupiter starts off the week, by the end of the week, we are out of that square with Jupiter. So that is good, because Jupiter's focus is on finances, with Pluto in retrograde focus on those you love. it kind of sort of feels like those people that you love are really getting in the way of your long-term financial goals, if that makes sense. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And let's face it, we all feel guilt when we know we need to hash out money to someone who really, really needs it, but we need it just as much, if that makes sense. And then we have that guilt of feeling that way. And, just it is what it is. Let it go, put it in the wash, hang it out to dry, throw it away, what have you. So there is a little bit of a challenge there at the beginning of the week, but then it goes away by the end of the week. So that makes things a lot nicer, right? Pluto is in a sextile with Neptune. Now, Neptune's focus is on relationships. So those you love and your relationships. I feel like with Pluto's retrograde at this point, Pluto is all about your sense of personal power and transformation. So this is forward movement. But when you retrograde that, actually, it's kind of like taking a break from being the powerhouse and just enjoying the people around you. And this planet lineup. This is what this is all about. It's about taking the time to enjoy the people around you, not looking at them as more work to do, because let's face it, they're your children, your grandchildren, your great grandchildren. Many times it is work. They are work. But we also have to take the time to appreciate and to enjoy. And it's very, very, very common where we don't do that. And then the kids just grow up and then we wish that they were little again and we could go back with the knowledge that we have now and appreciate it more. Avoid that and just appreciate it now. And it's not just our children, it's the people in our lives, period. For most of us, those people change depending on the various times they move in and out of our lives in many cases. You know, we take it for granted, these people that are around a lot of the time. How about just taking for granted that they're an intricate part of what makes your life beautiful, and not taking the time to appreciate that really is just sad when you think about it, and it really promotes a very sad life. So you don't want to do that. You want to appreciate, you want to enjoy, you want to do whatever you possibly can to have fun with these people while they are here in your life or you are here in theirs, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link below and send me a copy. I would appreciate it. And we are moving on to Aquarius, focuses on the day-to-day schedule. We do have Pluto is 29 degrees in Capricorn, but it's still on the cusp. So it's still there. Probably going to be for a while, to be honest with you. I don't think Pluto is going to get too far away from the cusp before he goes direct again. So that's unfortunately, even though he's in another sign, his influence is still going to be felt for the most part. Pluto starts off the week continuing to be in a square with Jupiter. Jupiter is focused on finances, and Pluto is retrograde, focused on those you love. And so on one hand, this does feel like you can never get ahead financially because you've got responsibilities to other people, or somebody is literally hemorrhaging the money that you're making, which is also a possibility as well. I'm kind of chuckling only because I understand this, but I'm not chuckling because it's not funny. Actually, when you're in a situation like that, it literally feels like the more you're walking forward, the more the wind is pushing you backwards, and it's really frustrating. My advice, if that is the case, is to communicate, but choosing your words is a really good idea. Now, I'm an Aquarius, and most of the Aquarians that I know have a tendency to be pretty direct and to the point. Pretty direct and to the point can very easily be miscommunicated or misunderstood as bossy. And I've been told I've been bossy a bazillion times. Well, really, I'm just like, this is the only way that it's going to work. And that's what I'm trying to portray, is this is the only way it's going to work. Unfortunately, when somebody says you're bossy, they shut me down and they do not listen to what I have to say. So I have to be the one to change the way I communicate this in order for people to understand and quite possibly embrace the concept, if that makes sense. Annoying, yes, but the whole thought of, I don't understand why people don't understand me, and they just have to learn how to understand how I communicate, is an egotistical bunch of baloney, because that's not what we're here to do. We're here to learn to communicate with other people, not make everybody else raise themselves to where we are, which is a problem for a lot of Aquarians. Do have that issue. And we want to make sure that we, as in those of us that are listening to this video and myself, are making sure that we are not creating that issue for ourselves as well as other people. Not our fault we're so smart and intellectual and wonderful. Not everybody can climb that high, I guess. Anyways, that's what I have for you guys this week. If you love your horoscopes, do click the link and send me a copy. I would appreciate that. And finally, we are moving on to Pisces. We've got a couple of different focuses going on and a couple of different things going on here. We're going to start with Saturn's grand sextile with Jupiter, which is focused on financial growth, and the sun, which is focused on your career. Saturn is retrograde and focused on your day-to-day schedule. Now, this is actually a very interesting, pardon me, this is a very interesting way that the planets are working together, because the planets are saying you want more money, you want to grow your capital, you have plenty of time to do it. Stop saying that you don't have time to do it. We all say those words. Well, I just don't have time. I say it almost every single day of my life. Well, I just don't have time. And it's a lie that we all tell, because no matter how busy we are, the time that we do have is not always spent in the most productive ways. So as we say, I don't have time, what we really mean is I choose not to make the time. And by choosing to make the time, your financial goals might actually be met, if that makes sense. So opening up time in your schedule to work on what you need to do, or even opening up some time for some additional work, also helps with that as well. We also have Neptune focus on relationships. Now, Neptune is in a square with Mercury and the sun, both of which are in Gemini up until the end of the week, and then the sun starts to move into Cancer, because the whole solstice thing and everything, right? So there's a couple of things from that, because both planets are focused on career. And while the sun is actually helpful in terms of what's going on with Saturn in Pisces also, Neptune, it's a different story. Neptune is literally in a challenge with the sun. And so we're really looking at where our time is being taken up, really. If we don't have time, we might be having some people in our lives that are taking up that time that you could be using in order to be successful financially or be successful in your career. So basically, when obviously I can think of a Pisces right now who's taking care of his parents. And obviously, yes, you could interpret that as they are taking up his time. But this is his responsibility. This is what he needs to do right now. They are his job right now. So you really can't look at that as they're taking up his time. However, let's say in theory, and I'm not saying that this is really how it is, okay, but let's say in theory, his wife is constantly taking up what time he has outside of his parent, because she wants attention, because she wants him to take her shopping, because she wants all this ridiculous stuff. Again, this is not happening, all right? But she wants all this ridiculous stuff all the time. It's taking, that relationship is taking up his time from doing something that could be more productive for the family as a whole, right? When you think about it. So we're looking at specific relationships here. Obviously, there's some relationships you have a responsibility to, and that's one thing. But if it's somebody that's taking up needless time, that's a different story. And when you kind of, for lack of a better way of saying it, cut the fat there, you actually are able to see that you do have the time that you need in order to put towards those particular goals, if that makes sense. So that's what I have for you guys this week. And if you love your horoscopes, do click the link and send me a copy. I would appreciate that very much. And that's it for the horoscopes this week. I'm Melissa Bruce, the Heavy Metal Psychic. Wow, that went by super quick. I really do hope you guys enjoy the horoscopes. I love to get the your comments and stuff like that, and all the messages that I get from the horoscopes. That's definitely a lot of fun. So keep them coming. Thanks again for hanging out. I'm Melissa Bruce, Heavy Metal Psychic. I will see you guys next week. Make it a fantastic week, everybody.